Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Freehold Resistance by Michael Z. Williamson, narrated by Tristan Morris and Tanya E.B. Prologue. Invasion. There had not been an interstellar war among the colonies and nations of humanity. There hadn't been a reason for one. Eventually, though, a reason was found. It was inevitable that colony systems with plenty of local resources, far smaller populations to demand them, and smaller bureaucracies trying to manage every facet of running them would develop quickly. As they did, some declared nationhood and joined the UN. The reasons for the latter were a combination of a sense of duty to the body politic of humanity, for trade and commerce through the established agencies, and for economic support and investment. The smaller and less funded colonies needed this more than some others. At the other end of the spectrum, Grainne was owned by Prescott Deep Space, which was owned by a single family. They were neither colony nor nation, and did as they wished, selling raw materials to all systems, neutral and unhindered. Grainne Colony, however, upset the routine when they declared themselves a nation, then made no effort to ask for UN membership. It would have been granted, since they were a wealthy system with a strong economy. The Parliament waited, and no request came. The Parliament inquired, and was told that the Freehold of Grainne saw no advantage to UN membership, but was happy to continue trading with members. At this slight, various factions made snide comments, accused the Freehold of selfishness and greed for all its development costs, failing to mention that had all been underwritten by Tantor, a private entity that might be smaller than Prescott, but was just as insular. When this failed to achieve a response, it was stated loudly in both Parliament and the media that Grainne's economy would promptly collapse without UN membership and support. It did not. Trade continued, wealth increased, and the freehold diplomats smoothed out political issues in trade deals that wouldn't have been necessary if the UN bureaucracy was not determined to have a say in everything and a cut for their operations. Until the UN tried to sanction the freehold and its ships for non-compliance with UN directives. Inconvenienced but not stopped, freehold ships either reflagged to other nations or simply hauled their goods into Caledonia or Novaya Russia and traded there. Navras especially was known for paying only lip service to UN directives and happily relisted anything it got as domestic production. It took a decade, but the UN Security Council, despite protests from several members, voted to form a committee to consider direct action. This committee immediately did so, ordering the Military Bureau to prepare for a military exercise, while privately informing a handful of reliable officers it wasn't an exercise, nor was it successful. The UN managed to slip an assault carrier into the Freehold system and dropped a landing force to secure Jefferson Starport as a landhead for further incursions. 4 of the 10 transports never made it to ground. 2 others force-landed in the wilderness. 4 landed successfully and were utterly outmanned and outmaneuvered. The Freehold media railed on the hilarity of attempting to occupy a planet with fewer than 2,000 troops. As powerful governments often do, the UN reacted to the slight by doubling down.
Spider's Web, Jessica Schlenker. Part 1. First week, February 210. Moira Kelly stepped into the kitchenette to fetch a drink for her grandmother. A string of Irish Gaelic she didn't recognize abruptly echoed through from the living room. She hadn't heard such words since her pelvis was crushed under a horse 6 or 7 years ago. She stepped back in to see what caused such a response from the normally restrained Isabel O'Higgins. Smoke filled the InfoSet's screen, suddenly backlit by a bright explosion. Pieces of a building, concrete roofing, what Moira could only hope wasn't a person, flung apart. A calm, measured voice spoke over the scene. "This is the live drone feed above Hellebrunn Base. UN ships have initiated an unprovoked attack on Grainne soil without warning. These ships did not declare their affiliation until after this act of war started." Another building took a direct hit, with a cluster of bright stars flaring just before the entire building exploded from the inside. UN forces are demanding... The InfoSet's signal cut off. "The devil, they're demanding anything, those bloody bastards." Isabel's voice dripped with venom. Moira agreed, mental wheels turning. Isabel took the forgotten glass from her. Moira apologized. Isabel waved it off. "You're thinking, lass." She smiled in a not particularly nice manner. "Are you brewing up mischief now?" Moira nodded slowly. "The kettle's just been put to boil, Grandma." "Be sure to let me know when you're ready for the teapot. I'd like a cuppa myself." Her concern and uncertainty must have shown on her face. "No," Isabel said softly. "You aren't going to go along with this nonsense. Not to save me. I'm old. I'm worn out. They destroyed my family and home once. Not again." "Okay." It hurt to agree. The broadcast spluttered back to life. A clean-cut male, whose uniform bore the UN emblem, sat in the primary seat. The room and set were different from normal, indicating the signal had been hijacked. "This is an interim broadcast during changeover. The UN has resumed leadership of the Grainne colony." "I highly doubt that," Moira snorted over his droning. "Can you hit record on this so I can analyze it later? I need to check in with some people." "Certainly, lass." Isabel set the record. The special console never slept, and her compatriots already were filling the screens with furiously typed messages. "Shut up, all you lot," she typed. "What the fuck do we know? And why don't we know more already?" "Espera, you heard about..." The messages overlapped. "We were watching the station broadcast. Again, what the hell do we have?" A flurry of information replied, and she scanned it. The UN's diplomatic vessel arrived a few weeks ago, and one of her dabblers out on the stations had helpfully slipped a mined data chip onto the ship, as usual. Precious little information had been gleaned, but Jenkins primarily focused on blackmail material, including what might interest their other client. It wasn't impossible he missed something. Her clique tended to keep away from military interests to avoid tangling with their own military. Invading her home changed that. "What are we going to do?" asked Breakneck. He had yet to live up to his claimed handle over the course of their escapades, or even manage to be useful. "We are spiders in the web," she replied. "We will do as we always do." Dale's OP opened a private comm. "The hell we will, Hesp. I won't. We can't let this happen." "I know, Dal. You know Break as well as I do. He'll flake if he thinks he's at risk of anything." "True. Trip and Dam are angry too, though." "Dam, I trust. But do we trust them enough?" "Dam served a term, so yes. Trip? I'm not sure." "Dam may have useful contacts. We're going to have to bridge where we normally avoid." "Yes." Damocles appeared in the comm. "Whatever it is, as long as it's against those UN bastards, I'm in." "Thanks for letting me ask the question, man," Moira snarked. "But good to know. Do you think Trip is solid? Break wouldn't be. He's only in this for the money." "Trip, maybe. I'll sound him out. You know we'll have to maintain some kind of op to keep the others from being curious, at least at first." "Yeah," Dale's OP replied. "Wankers." At least they were in agreement there, Moira thought. The main comm blinked and Moira flipped over. "Oh, shit." Salamander typed, "Trip, please tell me your sister and the baby are still visiting your folks. They just bombed the dormitories at the base here." "Oh, no. Oh, fuck. Baby's here. Sis just headed back off maternity leave 2 days ago. Oh, fuck. I have to tell my parents." Moira felt unbidden tears fall for her friend and thanked the heavens his baby nephew was safe. For now, at least. "Not unexpected," Damocles responded. "They've hijacked sat feeds, and they're taking out the bases. I'm surprised they didn't immediately take a station, too. Should probably try to check with Skylight up on Skywheel, too, to see if she's okay." He added in the back comm, "A few of my boys got out, but only a few. Dax pinged me from Heilbrunn. Rescue attempts are in progress. We don't have a response from Megiddo. He'll try to find out how many got out at Merrill. Assbags. It's night there." "Do we know the extent of the damage?" "Negative.
but I would expect the UN intends to bomb the bases into oblivion. It's what I would do.
Main comm chatter angered Moira. Shut up, all of you. The UN isn't interested in our little activities, yet. Don't make the mistake of thinking that won't change. Have any of you ever looked at the UN laws regarding what we do? We are all in deep shit if they decide to go after us. Jenkins flagged up a private comm.
My uplink to the diplomatic ship hasn't been shut down, yet.
How much access do you have?
Not enough to deploy Wrecking Ball, but I can fix that quickly. Won't even have to pull a Leroy.
Moira snorted at the age-old joke. How far are you willing to do this?
My brother was, at Heilbrunn. I hope he still is.
Crap. Sorry, man. Gotcha. We need as much access as deep as we can, as fast as we can.
I'm on it.
Moira flipped over to the back comm. Jenkins is going to play around at the alley.
He's in?
Damocles replied. He says his brother is stationed on base.
Shit. Fuck, came the replies. There's going to be a lot more casualties before this is over, Hesp.
I know, damn. I hope it won't be any of our guys, but...
Nuke the UN,
Dale's OP replied. Moira got up to stretch and check in with her grandmother. The info-set continued to drone UN propaganda on the satellite feeds. What do the normal broadcasts show? Moira asked.
I hadn't checked,
Isabel said. She gestured with the remote and changed over to the local news. Air footage of the demolished military base filled the screen. Craters partially encircled by the crumbled remains of walls smoked, both fire and dust. Lights from emergency vehicles pulsated while personnel scrambled over ruins, pulling at loose bits.
This is Action News reporting live. Heilbrunn has been targeted by apparent kinetic weapons. Witnesses report feeling the ground shake at the start of the attack. But there does not appear to be any fallout consistent with thermonuclear devices. Rescue missions are underway at this time. We have reached out to Freehold Forces contacts for any update available, but have been unable to successfully locate a contact so far.
The screen zoomed to a particular building cum crater as the anchor continued.
As this was the Public Relations Office, we do not expect a rapid official reply to our inquiries. What few unofficial sources we have been able to contact at this time, as well as the known takeover of the satellite-based channels, indicate that the United Nations is attempting a second invasion. Our viewers may recall the repulsed invasion attempt at the spaceport last year. It appears the UN learned from the previous failure and targeted the military forces directly. Stations located near the other Freehold Forces bases are showing similar destruction, and we have those feeds on parallel. We currently do not have a status on those forces stationed in locations other than the main bases. Here are the aerial views from other stations across Grainne.
Isabel gestured the remote, and the info-set shut down.
I've seen enough.
Moira thought of Jenkins, Tripleshot, and Damocles, all with friends and or family in the rubble. Yeah, I have work to do. Before the UN tries to turn every town and city on Grainne into more smoking rubble.
Force Majeure, Michael Z. Williamson, Part 1. The base was a hollowed-out 5-kilometer planetoid. It started as a project for a remote facility for austere support training, itself a training exercise. Then the UN invaded, and the exercise became real. It was built out in a matter of days. The passageways, spaces, even the bays were rough-hewn in the silicate, the precision-machined hatches in odd contrast to the blasted and burned gray material. It contained billeting with furniture, life support, limited vat and hydroponic food production, a power plant, docking pylons and umbilici, offices for staff, cargo bays, and even rec facilities. Factory ship MFS Force provided most of the tools, materials, and labor to convert a barren rock lacking even a chart listing into a crude but functional dock for small boats to engage in low-level resistance of the UN invaders. Force was 500 meters of ugly, tubular hull stuffed with every machine tool in existence, with the ability to fabricate as many more as it needed, or anything a fighting unit might require. With days or weeks between star systems, a war could be lost awaiting resupply. Force and her sister ships provided assets on location, from ammo to fuel to vehicles to custom weapons, replacement boots or armor, or even a ship. If a chemical analysis and blueprints existed or could be made, she could fabricate it, as long as there was raw material in her holds. She could build anything, but she couldn't fight. Her point defense was limited. She was possibly the best combat support craft in human history, the base being evidence of that, but not a combatant. Force was low on resources, and Captain Francis Yates wasn't sure what the future held. Surrender was unpalatable, but might be inevitable. Without a fleet carrier, he was stranded in system. Neither money nor engineering had yet made it possible for Force to have phase drive. They were stuck supporting a tiny fleet of gunboats and stealth insertion craft who were doing something he wasn't told about that seemed to be irritating the enemy, but he couldn't offer them much more at this point. He ran through a mental tally of the damage so far. It was depressing and terrifying. All 3 ground bases bombed with kinetic kills. Jefferson, Maru, Tanneville, Westport were all occupied. The jump points were all under UN control. Half the fleet weren't accounted for. Several were ID'd as lost, others as seized in system, unable to escape. Most of those were known to have taken some level of damage in either combat or capture denial procedures. None were known to have been scuttled outright. All this over a desire to be left alone, he thought. The videos didn't show much detail, just dust clouds over the bases. The broadcasts from the habitats documented attack, concern, occupation, and then switched to cheerful UN talking heads insisting all was well. Control the communications and the oxygen, he reflected, and you utterly control a space habitat. The groundside broadcasts lasted a bit longer, but also switched to happy propaganda. That meant the ground forces hadn't been able to stop occupation of media and presumably the minimal freehold government. Space Communications Tech 1, Jerry Maddy, broke his thoughts. "Sir, message from Station Control for you." Maddy's South Island's accent was fast but crisp. "Got it." Yates opened his display and pulled up a headset. One kept C-Deck quiet, and it just might be a sensitive communication. "Captain Yates, go ahead, Control." The control officer said, "Captain, I have some news." "Good news," the tech said evenly. "Sleipnir is coming in system to retrieve you. They have an operation." Sleipnir was a fleet carrier intended to haul non-star drive craft where needed. They had a large reactor, a huge frame, and a sizable crew. He noted, "I have almost nothing to support them with." He settled his body into his couch. It would make working easier. Though he was broad enough across the shoulders, the couch always felt snug, despite being programmed to fit him. Control replied, "That's understood. They have some resources." "Very well. I'll need the data and orders. Is this immediate?" "To reduce detection profile, yes. Less signature is better." "Then I guess action on the war is good. Shoot it over and we'll get to work." The officer sounded wistful. "It's been awe-inspiring to watch you and your crew work. Please relay our thanks and kudos to your crew." "I will. Thank you for giving us a mission and a purpose." He didn't ask how the information got here. The boats carried some, and there were rumors of piggyback signals on the UN-controlled network and entertainment feeds. Low density, but apparently discreet and effective. The orders and data had them reaching a point far out in the halo in 2 weeks. That was a long, slow movement. It would minimize signature, though. If they boosted all out, the ship used continent years of energy that would be easy to locate. There was nothing to hide behind in deep space. By the end of the day, the crew detached for liaison, duty, and recreation were all back aboard. The ship unshackled and nudged free on maneuvering thrusters, then engaged drive to take them out. There were no signals, not even tight beam. The base was as close to blackbody as possible. It was small, wrapped in a fluff of vac gel that absorbed radiation going in or coming out, and made as few transmissions as possible. It would be hard to detect or suspect, and the boat pilots would scramble the coordinates if threatened. Force powered away gently, minimizing her own signature, bound for the war, but at a very leisurely pace. 14 days of her 19-day course elapsed. Somewhere ahead was the fleet carrier Sleipnir, ready to grapple them and depart system. They'd know when they got there. Somewhere behind was a UN warship in a trajectory that didn't match, but wasn't far off. They seemed to be conducting search sweeps. The only option was to continue slow, steady boost and hope they couldn't see force against the background. Sudden variations would be more noticeable. At this point, if anything had happened to the carrier, or they'd astrogated incorrectly, they'd have to find a way to evacuate the crew, scuttle the ship, and attempt to reach and hide in one of the habitats or on the ground. We had our own nation, damn it, but we couldn't accept the UN requirements for membership, and we couldn't remain a colony. Now we're an entire system of refugees and rebels. Still, orders were orders, and he represented his nation. He'd do his damnedest to be part of whatever was going on, whether it delayed the inevitable, allowed time for diplomacy, or just for residents to disperse away from the invaders. The commo contact flashed. Tech Maddie swiped to accept. Vessel identified as FMS Force. This is UNS Montevideo. You are ordered to proceed at best safe speed to Station Cayley and make orbit. All forces of the Grainne colony will revert to UN control. Please respond and comply. The message wasn't totally unexpected, but knowing all major Freehold forces installations were smoking craters, it was iodine in an open wound. Yates looked across the control center at his staff, arranged in a circle, each G-couch in a pie-section-shaped block of controls. We can't fight. Can we outrun them? Tactical Officer Lieutenant Reevely linked astrogator Farana's display to his. He scrolled, swiped, and sent something back to her. A moment later, it popped on Yates's display. Farana replied, "Sir, Montevideo is a cruiser. She can chase us and eventually catch us." Yates looked at the curves and decided. Wait for their warning hail, then respond. Then dial the thrust down slowly. How long can we reasonably delay intercept? No more than 3 days. At least 1, she said, having already calculated the curves. She was tiny, with a slim build. All her development had gone into her brain. That's our strategy. Hopefully we can get close enough for Sleipnir to take us. As anticipated, the second hail was more sternly worded. Ship identified as FMS Force. Please heed previous transmission at once. Further disobedience will be considered a hostile act and grounds for engagement. They won't even allow us our own name, he said in irritated amusement. Comply as discussed. Farana touched controls, and the thrust curve changed, imperceptibly at first, then just barely noticeably. Maddie replied, Montevideo, this is FMS Force. We have received your transmission. We are reducing thrust and will make most efficient way to your stated position. We are a support ship on a deep space training and provisioning mission. We presume there is a military emergency we have not been informed of. Please advise the nature of the situation. He watched across the arc as Farana furiously worked her screen, grid, touchpad, and even scratched some markings on a second screen with her fingertip. He knew she was plotting the best curves possible. The transmission lag was 32 seconds. 32 light seconds was a good distance, but it wasn't good enough to prevent interception. Ship identified as FMS Force. As stated before, all craft of the former Grainne colony are reverting to UN control. This process began over a week ago. Lag. Maddie replied, Montevideo, this is Force. Under whose authority is this change? Lag. Ship identified as FMS Force. This is UN authority. Yates tapped a message from Maddie to repeat. Montevideo, this is Force. As we're an unarmed support ship, we are complying with your directive. Please officially note we do so under protest and expect a hearing at an Admiralty court. The awaited reply was, Yeah, whatever. Maddie snarked. He seems nice. Farana pinged for attention. Important, not critical, or she'd have spoken. He looked over. Astrogator? Sir, I have a trajectory. It will give us 2 days and some to deny resources to the enemy. He was about to reply when another message came in, coded. Force, this is Sleipnir. Immediately proceed to plot point Alpha. We will rendezvous. The message had cut through on priority. Farana raised her eyebrows and said, That's a bastard of a trajectory change on their part. As in, I can see the trail. That means Montevideo can, too. They have big reactors. Can we keep ahead of Montevideo? For a while. Let me check drive efficiency. A seg later, she said, I've got our best plot. They can possibly intercept short-term, though. He asked, Can we release debris to delay them? Reevely shook his head a fraction and said, Not enough to matter. If they go balls out, they can catch us, but then they have to call for recovery for themselves. I suspect they won't. Your call, sir. Let me see the plot. Farana flashed it to his comm, and he glanced over it. Montevideo would get within weapon range, but not reliably. Did they want to waste weaponry on a non-combatant support ship that, as far as they knew, had no support? Probably not. I don't see a way to do better. Proceed. Shortly, another message repeated. Ship identified as FMS Force. Stand down or be fired upon. Ignore that. Can they hit us? Reevely replied. Not reliably. 5% chance. Well, this is a war. 5% is better than 50. Keep running. Reevely corrected. They might actually make 10%. Still worth it. And they fired. He felt a ripple of shock. This was it, because obviously the pursuers thought it was worth wasting a missile. Bastards. Track? He could just see the man's head shake as he replied, Not defined at this point, other than it's in the right cone. Yes, please update. Will do. Moments later, Farana said, I don't like the plot curve. We're safe until recovery, but we can't drive hard enough to get away. They can keep shooting and may get a cleaner shot, especially if telemetry from this one helps their placement. Overboost. My order. You may go to never exceed power level if you need to. I need 5% over that to make it work, and 125% of boost. And that's why I'm captain. Do it, but ease off as soon as you can. Will do. Stand by for power. She sounded the emergency klaxon and boost alert, waited barely 3 seconds, and eased the engines up to 0.5 G, 1 G, 1.5 G, 1.8, 2.3. The entire space frame hummed with vibration as material was stressed beyond intended limits. His screens showed reactor temperature rising, containment holding, but taking wear at a dangerously accelerated rate. Driveline temperature getting into the red, and the driveline losing efficiency as he watched. Days of fuel were disappearing in seconds. Then the boost cut. Reevely advised, Interception definitely below 50%. Well, that's good to know. On the one hand, they wanted to avoid capture. On the other hand, Marooned in deep space was only a moral win by denying the ship to the enemy, which they had much more.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?